system and of course of the suppliers, but a common programme to deliver our broad objectives for the improvement of the European railway system, allowing us through it to deliver the policy objectives we have, essentially of bringing more traffic to rail to deliver the European Green Deal objectives, to help decarbonisation, but of course to ensure that rail is a better, stronger part of our overall transport system, also to meet the economic objectives of the Union and the social inclusion objectives of the Union. So we put a lot of money into this and we work with you, trying to also make sure the JU is focused on those matters that cannot be done by individual companies, or indeed sometimes individual countries operating alone, but where there really is added value in us all working together. So that's the sort of broad objective. Giorgio will go into a lot more of the detail later on. But then if we can have the next slide, just a word on what we are trying to achieve with this call. Well, this call, as you know, is a call for new associated members of the JU. So Europe's Rail, in its current form, it's the second version of our rail joint undertaking. But Europe's Rail itself has already been operating for a couple of years, so it has most of its membership formed. But when we set it up, it was always envisaged that we would have a further call for associated members around now. And that's because we always saw a need to broaden the membership of the JU, both to increase its geographic coverage. And as you see, the call is open not only to entities established in member states, but also in those established beyond the Union in the countries which are associated with Horizon Europe. But of course, there are parts of the Union itself which are underrepresented in the JU, and we would certainly be very pleased to broaden the representation of those countries in the JU through this call as well. Additionally, and as importantly, of course, the objective of the call is to bring in members with expertise in areas that are currently not covered by the JU, or where things have maybe developed in a way that we hadn't envisaged when the initial programme and the initial membership of the joint undertaking was established. So again, and later on in the day, this will be gone into much more detail. But again, we're looking for particular capabilities in areas that weren't covered. For example, in particular, some of the areas around telecoms and FRMCS are ones that have emerged as areas needing greater attention since the original programme was established. Now, as Giorgio said, this is not a work programme. This is not a call to bid for individual projects. It's one of the specialities of the joint undertakings that the members have first to be selected to join the JU, and to do that process, of course, we have to have some idea of what they bring to it, how much commitment they can legitimately make to the JU, etc., which is why you're being asked to go through this process. But it doesn't mean that you then are just given work from the work programme. You would then still have to join consortium and bid for the individual work programme projects as they are advertised by the JU in due course of time. So it's a two-step process. I know that's a bit complicated for many people perhaps to understand from the outside, but I have to say it works pretty well in practice. And of course, the membership of the JU who you will be working with, if you succeed in this call, they are pretty experienced in the process. So they can, I think, lead you through the requirements of that. As you also see on this slide, and again, it will be gone into in much more detail later, we expect members of the JU, well, we require members of the JU when they take part in the programme not only, of course, to do work which reflects the grant contributions they get, but additionally, and of course, this is completely fair, given that you share in the results of the programme, you have ownership of the results of the programme. But the quid pro quo for that is that you are expected also to put in substantial, what we call in-kind contributions. So you have to bring and demonstrate that you're bringing work of real value to the table, also paid for by your own organisations. And a final point here is that in addition to doing the work in the joint undertaking itself, of course, this is one small part of a very large, indeed the world's largest collaborative research programme, Horizon Europe. And we are additionally looking through the work of the JU, but also this call at people coming from outside the traditional rail environment who can help us join up, ensure alignment with other parts of the programme, with other bits of work which are of interest and use to rail. So again, when we're looking at the applications, ability to help foster that coordination and synergy across the programme is something that would be certainly of added value and an additional benefit to us. So with that, I will pass the floor back to Giorgio, and we very much look forward to your questions today to ensure that you have a full understanding of what we're looking for, and that therefore you can go into the process with the ability to deliver an expression of interest which accurately reflects your abilities and your interest in the programme. And hopefully I look forward also to working with many of you in the future to actually deliver the programme with us. Giorgio, back to you.
Thank you very much, Keir. This is great. I think you have seen everybody that the union is also looking for, making this program even better, and your participation is certainly one of the key factors. So now going a bit into more the detail, this slide was already shown to you before, but it's important to remind the deadline of the 4th of November at 12. Please be aware that any submission that will be done post the deadline cannot be accepted. And the other important part is that this application is open to any legal entity. We will see later on who are those eligible entities. About Europe's rail, just to set a bit the frame, I think, Keir already explained it well. That is a public-private partnership. So we have the European Union on one side and the private member on the other. It was established by a council regulation. It has a limited time frame. It is using also the budget from the Union from the Horizon Europe funds, and is taking up its work based also on its predecessor, which some of you may know was called Shift to Rail. And the way how we implement a research program that I will describe it in a moment is also through the implementation of grants that are awarded from call for proposal or tenders. If I go to the next slide, here it is. So the mission of Europe's rail, it's clearly to deliver a fully integrated European railway network for its citizens and business. In short, is also to ensure that we create or we enable the creation of the single European railway area. And we have a series of objectives that are linked in making sure that rail will become more flexible, interoperable, intermodal, sustainable, reliable, increase capacity, competitive, and inclusive. And what is also important for you to know are the objectives that are set in this regulation, in this single basic act for Europe's rail, because you will be contributing if you will be interested to become members of this undertaking to the realization of these objectives. I have already explained about the single European railway area, but it is also our ability to integrate the rail system in a wider mobility system, so also opening up. This is also part of the flexibility that rail can demonstrate. Then also to ensure that the European rail industry is strong worldwide, so the competitiveness factor. And then there are some more specific objectives which are linked about the integration, the sustainability, the resilience, the fact that we would like to build up a system that is unified with harmonized operational concept, both related well, to the entire rail system. And we're starting to do that largely also with the CCS system. That is also able to bring rail freight in a more attractive and making it more competitive. Also, our objective is to provide demonstration projects in interested countries to bring sustainability and leadership of the supply industry worldwide. And then finally, also ensuring that we are implementing EU policies and we're making synergies also with other initiatives and instruments. Those are the policy largely to which Europe's rail is contributing. We have double objective of greening and making rail more digital. So these fit perfectly with the European Green Deal, the digital decade, and obviously we are contributing as well to the sustainable and smart mobility strategy of the European Commission, but also to the industry strategy. The expected results are largely those that I have already explained to you. For all of those results, here are not detailed, but we have a specific key performance indicator, and we're monitoring those key performance indicators through the implementation of our projects. So we're also asking the projects when we are launching a call for proposal for a specific key performance indicator. So it's an additional, let's say, measure that we ask and that we monitor. The way how we implement our program and the way how we are achieving all of these is with an end-to-end program or a system view program that is largely based on 3 pillars. Firstly, the research and innovation part that starts from low TRL, reaching ITRL, and the demonstration activities are done through the so-called innovation pillar. In the innovation pillar, we have also flagship projects. Those flagship projects are projects that includes large-scale demonstrations and that are reaching ITRL. Next to that, we also have exploratory research project or a fundamental research innovation or disruptive research and innovation that will be done also in parallel and that will open up the possibility also of thinking out of the box and also creating the grounds also for the next systems. Linked to the research and innovation, there is also the reflection that is still research about the evolution of the system itself. So how do we make sure that all those different innovations fix together? So it's about linking them and defining the correct interfaces between the different subsystems and standardizing them at European Union level or harmonizing them. And one important element in the definition of this harmonization is the functional system architecture that can only be existing also if we are harmonizing the operating mode. And so this is big part of the work that the system pillar is doing in contributing as well with its work to standard and regulation. So also providing input to the European Union Agency for Railway for the technical specification for interoperability. And then once we have this, obviously we needed to look on how we are going to implement the program in the existing system that is a brownfield situation. So we needed to think about migration strategies, both from the technical and operational side, but also looking on the best way to implement those successful output in a synchronized manner across countries and regions, but also looking at the financial elements and how it's possible to implement with a wide range of stakeholders and different interest and also benefit. So this is really a global approach that we have. But now I would like to deep down a little bit more on the implementation side of the program. So the program is implemented within those three different areas, but the one that really is, if you want, the most expensive is clearly the innovation pillar one. It's where we do most of the research activities, and those research activities are divided, as I have explained, into flagship topic calls and exploratory calls or tenders. The flagship topic are there to implement the flagship area 1 to 6 that I will explain in a moment. And we have designed the program with three different waves of call. The first wave had been already launched in 2022, and it covered 50% of the need, of the expected need of research and innovation on those flagship area. Then we're expecting to launch another, the second wave for flagship area, which will cover about 30% of the remaining needs at the end of 2025. And we will then launch the remaining part in 2027. Close to that, we are launching on a regular basis exploratory topics call and tender. Then we have the system pillar. The system pillar has a also dedicated budget of 50 million euros for its implementation, and the deployment group doesn't have a dedicated budget, but obviously if there is a need of few studies, those will be covered as well. In total, you can see the program has a significant value, so we can actually achieve a significant impact. Impact is also the keyword in our implementation. We are using 650 million euros of union contribution, and this union contribution needs also to be topped up by private members' contribution, therefore both from founding member and associated member. And you can see it's the same amount, 615. The way how the program is implemented and how it is defined mainly is through a successive series of documents. If we start from the top, we have the regulation that define largely the objective and the scope of the joint undertaking. Then we have the master plan that define the strategy of the joint undertaking. And here the focus also for you, it's both on the master plan, but also on the multi-annual work program, because the multi-annual work program is further detailing the specific research and innovation activities that we're expecting to perform in the years to come. And obviously the members are an important element of the implementation of our program, because as you have seen before, they contribute with in-kind contribution of in-kind and also financial. You will see later on in the presentation of Vasilis for 615 million euros. So those 615 million euros are part of the multi-annual work program, and they are topped up by union funding. So the total multi-annual work program represent about 1.2 billion euro. The way we're then launching and implementing this multi-annual work program is through annual work programs. So every year we're publishing annual work programs, and in the annual work programs there are the call for proposal to which both members and non-members will apply. So there is no specific budget dedicated to the members. This is an important element. And there is no specific budget dedicated to the non-member. Those of you who were used to shift to rail, this is a big change compared to shift to rail, meaning that all our calls are open and in competition. This is the multi-annual work program content. Briefly, so I suggest that you have in-depth reading, of the multi-annual work program, but largely there are 7 flagship area and a transversal topic that are quite well described. So the flagship area 1 deals with the traffic management system and how we're making it evolving from a situation where today traffic management system are largely still not using all the potential of the digital tools, but especially they're also not connected one with each other. And they are, as you know, traffic management system at best are managed, traffic is managed at best at national level or at regional level, and they don't speak one with each other. So the idea is to find the solutions to enhance on the ability for infrastructure managers to manage traffic, but at the same time also to ensure that we can connect the different systems around Europe so that in case of disruption, intelligent solutions can be quickly found. We have also the flagship area 2 that deals with automated and automation train operations. So it's all about digitalization. How do we bring the digital train solutions inside the current system, and especially linked with ERTMS. So it's all ETCS based innovation, but also how all those advancements that we will be making also on the TCMS will fit in a general architecture. We then have a flagship area 3 that deals with integrated asset management that we're making intelligent. So it's about predictive maintenance using the also new digital tools to ensure that we can use predictive maintenance, but also we're looking into manufacturing elements and procedural elements, both for rolling stock and infrastructure. Flagship area 4 deals with green and sustainable railways. Green and sustainable railways in the sense that we're looking still for solutions that further reduce the energy consumption of rail, but also solutions that fit in the circular economy concept, and that also look in general for the greening of the rail systems. Flagship area 5 deals with freight. The idea is to increase the attractiveness of freight through also here mainly the application of digitalization. We have 2 main work streams of this flagship area. One is about the introduction of a digital automatic coupler, and the second one it's about creating a seamless digital freight, meaning that the freight forwarder and in any case who would like to use and the shipper who would like to use freight services can easily access them, which is not the case today. Flagship area 6, it's about regional services. Today we have a situation in Europe where a lot of lines have been built, but some lines are not really used to their full potential. And usually those are regional or rural lines. And the idea is how do we revitalize those lines, how we make them more competitive. And competitive is the key word in this case, because the idea is to look for solutions that decrease the cost of railway and at the same time that include railways in a multimodal ecosystem at a regional level. So how do we how can we fit the rail services also with other transport modes. Flagship Area 7, this does not generate a flagship project, contrary to all the previous one that I have described, because it's disruptive research. It's a low TRL research about guided transport mode, so not necessarily rail transport mode, but guided transport mode that could have the potential to bring a sustainable transport mode in Europe and a new innovation. It's also about a new innovation in rail, like maglev technology, the application of maglev technology in rail, but it's also about Hyperloop as well. As I mentioned, they are generally low TRL, so they don't generate a flagship project. The budget is also more contained for this flagship area. And the last area of activity that is described in the multi-annual work program is the transversal topic. What we mean by transversal topic, it's all the digital tools that will be used by all the other flagship area that could be used in a harmonized way or in a common way across the rail system. So the idea is to create tools that allow an easy build of digital twins, but especially a build of digital twin that could be compatible one with each other. Otherwise, we will have a plethora of digital twins, but that cannot be linked one with each other. And then there is also the idea and to create, and this is what we're working on as well, a digital data space where data can be shared to create also new services. And we're doing it from a research and innovation perspective. In the middle, you see that in this slide is also added the exploratory research and other activities. Those are not defined on purpose in the multi-annual work program, because every year we're going to define activities for exploratory research and other activities in the annual work program, because by definition they cannot be predefined in advance. Keir already mentioned it. The joint undertaking today is constituted by founding members only. The European Union is the biggest founding member that contribute to 50% of the budget of this joint undertaking. And the European Union is represented by the European Commission. We have both DG Move and DG Research in our governing board. All the other members that you can find on the screen are also present in the governing board, and so will be the future associated members. And those are the ones that have already committed a significant amount of these 615 million euros to this program. Just a short information. If you are one of those members, obviously you cannot then become also associated member. And it is the same if you are an affiliated entity of those members. So you then are automatically also considered by us as a member. So it's important that you see within your structure, if you are part of those entities, the call for associated member is not full. Okay, I see that the slides are not shown in the comments. This is strange. Maybe try to restart the Teams, because it appears for all the others. So I will continue. This is the part also that Keir mentioned in the multi-annual work program, which is available online, and we had provided also the link in the call for expression of interest. We have created an updated version. It's called the version 3 of the multi-annual work program. And here in this slide, you can see what are the main changes that we have done from the version 2 to the version 3. The version 3 has been built up to facilitate the associated member application, because we have highlighted the areas where we need additional and complementary expertise to the current founding member. Why this is important? Because we would like, with the enlargement of the membership, to also enlarge the scope of the program and not have just redundancies among members' capabilities to deliver project and programs. Therefore, those are the areas where we suggest that you look into and that you focus your application into. They are not exclusive, meaning that if you think you can contribute to some additional complementary activities on top of those ones, you can obviously indicate that in your membership application, because you will see in a moment that in the finalization of the membership itself, your contribution will then be also included in the multi-annual work program. Therefore, we will have a further update next year. Nevertheless, also we will have, by the way, a further update if, for example, none of the application from the associated member is covering those areas. Then we need to see if we have the capability to cover it without members, or if we will need to remove those additional elements. So those additional elements are first, well, the first one that has been identified is that we're looking for complementary expertise on artificial intelligence, and in particular that will be supporting the flagship area 3 on maintenance and the transversal topic, so on the digital. You can see there the additional elements about artificial intelligence that we think are important, and you can find those reflected in the text both of flagship area 3 and of the transversal topic in the multi-annual work program version 3. Then another area is the cybersecurity. So also there we're looking for companies and entities that have expertise on cybersecurity and that are able to contribute to it in future research and innovation project, and those mainly impacting flagship area 1, so on TMS, and again the transversal topic because it's a digital solution. Another area, it's about the next generation of communication system. We are implementing currently with a test program the FRMCS specifications, but we are looking for further expanding with the use of MNOs, as well as with the use of satellite communication using GovSat communication and the tool called IRIS Square that is also developed at European Union level with another program. But how do we apply that in the rail system? Then it's also about the different application based on ETCS with FRMCS. Therefore, those elements are both impacting the flagship area 2 and the flagship area 6, because also at regional level there will be such type of needs. Then the other area is the climate adaptation. So it's a key matter in this moment of time. Recently, there were plenty of flooding issues, as you know, around Europe, and we needed to develop tools and methodology, and having as well the ability to have an holistic view on how do we address climate adaptation. So this is both on infrastructure and rolling stock. and touching both flagship area 3 and flagship area 4. So also expertise in this area, it's also looked at in the associated member call. And the last bit, it's about the regional solution. So regional solution here in particular, obviously it's only linked with flagship area 6, but here in particular, we're looking for the ability also to build a new demonstrator, a new vehicle demonstrator that will be significantly cheaper compared to the existing solution. So applying all the theoretical elements of innovation for a regional subsystem into practice. So really looking into demonstration activities on the vehicle side first, but also on the signaling part as well, and the integration of the both. So those are the main area. Again, this is something that's worth to remind, even though Kier has already mentioned it, that this call for expression of interest is not a call for proposal. So here we're just looking for members that are willing to contribute. Members that are willing to contribute, they make a commitment to the joint undertaking, but the joint undertaking is not making any commitment to them. The commitment about the funding of the union funding, or the funding that the joint undertaking will provide to future beneficiary, is only through the assignment of grant agreement, through the successful application of call for proposal. And as I mentioned, call for proposal are going to be published openly, so both members and non-members can apply to that. So if you're interested in funding from the European Union, so funding from Europe's Rail, you don't necessarily need to become member. You can apply already today to call for proposal independent. Members is another story. Members is actively contributing to this program with, and you will see also later on, a reduced funding rate. Obviously, the advantage is that then you will become a part of the governance of this joint undertaking, and therefore also influence the direction of the program. But it's not about funding. You will find much more information than what we're going to present today. In the call for expression of interest, there is a little bit of a typo there in our website. Before submitting the proposal, and I will explain to you high level what are those checks that needs to be done on your side, is that you are sure to be admissible and eligible, because otherwise your application will not be scored and reviewed. You can always ask us questions to the info call, and the same email address is there for you to submit the application. This application, I already mentioned, should be submitted before the deadline, and the admissibility conditions are written there. The application should be complete, meaning that all the templates needs to be filled in full. It needs to be readable, otherwise we cannot judge it, and accessible and printable. So please make sure that all those conditions are met when you submit your application, because otherwise you cannot go into the next step. The next step is the eligibility condition. So also here it's important that you check that you are either a legal entity established in a EU member state, which obviously you are eligible, or you are a legal entity that is established in an associated country to Horizon Europe, and therefore in this case you are eligible, and there will be more about it in a moment, and or you are an international organization. Speaking about associated country, there is a link in the call for expression of interest where you can see the updated list of associated country. This is a screenshot as of today, so keep it monitoring. But as of today, we have 19 associated countries. You can see it there. And also your application will be valid and therefore eligible for assessment if you are an entity based in a country that has a transitional arrangement with the Union for the association to Horizon Europe. So if you are in the process of the association to Horizon Europe, you can submit an application, you will be eligible, but the final selection, so when we're going to do, the governing board is going to do the selection of the associated member, at this moment in time, you should be already, or your country should be already associated to Horizon Europe. Otherwise, you cannot become a member. The eligibility, it's also important that you are submitting the application signed with a legal representative of the individual entity applying. If it is not signed by a legal representative, also it cannot be eligible. Secondly, one condition that it is indicated in the call for expression of interest is that application submitted by the applicant in the form of a consortium, in the sense the consortium that you may be used to in the application of a call for proposal, meaning that you are different entities grouping together and you have a coordinator that submitted the proposal, is not considered eligible. So we're not. So this is not a call for proposal. This is a call for expression of interest for membership. So therefore, we are looking for not consortia but entities that are engaging themselves individually to the joint undertaking scope. In case you would like to submit a grouped application, there are possibilities. Here we're giving some example. For example, you can apply as one single entity with affiliated entities. This is what also a lot of founding members have done, that you come with your affiliated entities that support the activities of the member, but the member remain responsible towards the joint undertaking for the entire letter of commitment. Then you could apply with building up, for example, a joint venture. We have also a case in the founding member where different companies have created, different entities have created a joint venture with the scope to apply to the joint undertaking, and then the joint venture remain the one responsible for it legally. And then the other possibility is that you apply with several companies, but then each companies are signing the same letter of commitment. So there is not a coordinator. All of them are equally responsible. Although these imply that if you want to do this type of grouping, there will be only one seat in the governing board and in the different groups of Europe's rail. I would like to bring to your attention that this construct, first of all, is not needed because there is no minimum contribution that is required to the application. So in terms of budget, so it means that even if you're not a big company, but you think you can contribute significantly to the next year of research and innovation, obviously it cannot be that you apply with, let me say, 5,000 euros. Now I exaggerate, but 5,000 euros of in-kind contribution, you can well understand that this will not be considered by the evaluator as a sufficient condition for a contribution to the program. But if the contribution is meaningful in one of the areas that we have identified before, or a subset of those areas, there is no minimum contribution required. So you don't need to group yourself just because you would like to submit a big budget. Not at all. It's not the scope of the call for expression of interest for associated members. So just this, so that you know also the reason why consortia are not needed. What is important to be submitted is all the applications. So we have the application form template. It must be duly filled in, signed, providing the legal information, key competence and capability and financial soundness. It is important we have carefully written this form. There are specific instructions to be followed on the amount of the fonts of the way the pages expected and all of these. These instructions needs to be followed. Pay attention to that. And in addition, for each section, we have provided guidance. So we have explained to you what we are expecting to see written in those sections. So it's important also that you look at that, because the evaluators will be comparing application. So it's important that all the information requested is in there. Also, what is important is that possible competencies and contribution from constituent entities of the applicant and affiliated entities, as I explained before, are also described in the application form, because your affiliated entity or constituent entities, if you are a company having sister companies, can really be part of your contribution as one contribution. The letter of commitment should also be clearly duly filled in. It's a draft letter of commitment. Later on, there will be a real letter of commitment that will be signed following a procedure that I will explain also in a moment. But in there, we would need to have the preliminary estimation of the level of the in-kind contribution that you would like to provide to the joint undertaking. And this in-kind contribution is divided both to operational activities and additional activities. So now going into the selection process, the way how if you are admissible and eligible, you will go into a selection process, or your application will go into a selection process. And first, there will be a pre-selection with a technical assessment. This technical assessment will be done with a panel composed by at least, here I think it's missing the wording, at least 3 independent experts. And those independent experts will assess 2 different criteria. Criteria 1 that deals with your additionality, so what you bring complementary in the program, what are your capabilities as well. And the criteria 2, it's about the financial soundness, resources, and your in-kind contribution. In order to be pre-selected, the application should be qualified as satisfactory. And what it is satisfactory, you need to reach a minimum threshold. So there will be a voting system that the experts will have. And the minimum threshold for you to reach for each individual section is 40. And the minimum threshold overall is 80. We made it quite simple, 40 plus 40. So for the two criteria. These are the criteria under which the evaluator will judge your application. So it's important that you are aware of those, because based on those different sub-criteria, your evaluation will be scored. So the first one is the added value that you bring in terms of competencies and capability to significantly contribute, and the significantly is about the example I gave to you before about the 5,000 euros, to the Europe's Rail Integrated Program and its objective as defined in the master plan, and extending the Europe's Rail as well membership geographical scope. Here mentioned to you before, it's also one of the objectives of this call for expression of interest. The second element, it's about the relevance of your application and your RNI strategy and the disruptive technology able to address the new identified areas in the multi-annual work program, work plan, which is the one that I have showed to you before. Thirdly, is the ability to reach a sufficient TRL level and industrial readiness level, because where we are in the evolution of this program is that we are continuing to increase the TRL. I have shown to you, for example, for Flagship Project, which is the bigger side of the program, therefore the area where normally the membership is contributing mostly, is to increase the TRL from the third wave of call to the second wave and the third wave. So it's also about this. Then it's also about the ability to develop and integrate technology from other sector into the rail sector. You know, when we're speaking of digital, artificial intelligence, etc., communication on through satellite, those are not specific rail sector technology. So it's also about your ability to bring those outside technology inside the rail sector. And then we will also evaluate your track record, past experience, develop knowledge, proof of RNI capacity, etc., which obviously is important to know. Concerning the financial soundness, resources and in-kind contribution, so you will see that the sub-criteria are about your operational capacity to actually implement the promise research and innovation activities. So we're looking into financial information about balance sheets, for example. It's about the ability also to contribute and commit on a long-term basis, both financially. Financially, you will see also in a moment what we will be asking in terms of contribution, but also in kind. In kind meaning with your engineers and your facilities to the innovation program. And we will analyze the description and the estimate of those contributions. We will also analyze the typology and the size of the entity, as well as relevant private investments or relevant research and innovation activities that can, let's say, further provide elements or demonstration elements of your financial soundness. Following that, if you are passing those minimum threshold that I have mentioned before, there will be an assessment by the executive director, and based on this assessment, a short listed of associated member will be provided to the governing board. The governing board will make the final assessment and will make also the selection. So we'll assess, accept, or reject the application based on the list that was provided to them. At this point in the phase, the governing board may also ask an additional support or an additional check from the scientific steering group of the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking. So this is an optional, let's say, possibility for the governing board, for example, in case there are doubts about the assessment. Following the governing board decision, there will be also the needed endorsement by the European Commission. And only when there is the endorsement of the European Commission of the finally selected members, the members will be informed and the letter of commitment signature process will start. This letter of commitment signature process will be done with me. It will be about a negotiation procedure on basis on both your application and what the governing board decided to retain from your application. So this negotiation will be mainly about the scope and the in-kind contribution dimension that you will be able to provide to the joint undertaking. And once there is an agreement reached also with you, you will be able to sign the letter of commitment because you will be already being selected as associated member. Following the signature of the letter of commitment, you will become effectively a member of the joint undertaking, and therefore you would start to participate, for example, in the governing board, but not only, also in other different bodies of the Europe's Trade Joint Undertaking. This is a very preliminary estimated calendar. Take it with a lot of to be confirmed dates, but I think it's useful for you to have a knowledge of what are the next steps after the evaluation. After the evaluation that we are planning to be ended by the end of the year, we will have the governing board that also this date is to be confirmed, but we would like to do it at the beginning of February. This governing board will possibly decide on the selection of the associated member. Why I say possibly? Because, as I mentioned before, the governing board could decide to ask the scientific steering group to do an additional assessment. In this case, the decision will be postponed because before we will need to have the scientific steering group optional and additional assessment. In case this is not requested by the governing board, we can then move to the EC endorsement, the European Commission endorsement, with a date to be happening a few weeks after the governing board decision to make sure that the internal administrative process of the Commission can be fulfilled, and also to be seen indicatively. So this 21st of February, it's to be really thought as indicatively, but more or less, if this calendar is maintained, we could think that around the end of February, we could start the negotiation of the letter of commitment, and around the end of March, we will have the letter of commitment finalized and signed by you, and it will mean that we could revise and relook at the activities that are described in the both multi-annual work program and work program 25-26, so that we make sure that those are matching also with your contribution. This will be done around until April, and then the governing board of June will approve, if they want to, the updated work program 25-26, which reflect also your letter of commitment, the updated multi-annual work program, which also reflect your letter of commitment, and then other documents that are part of the governing board decision. I have provided there for your information, because in case you will become associated member, it will be the first governing board with associated member. And then the next call that Europe's RAID will be launching will be largely for flagship area in Q4 2025. So it means that it will provide the time also to the associated member to prepare themselves to reply to this call for proposal, which is, as I mentioned, an additional necessary step if you would like to benefit from European funds. You can also decide to become members of the joint undertaking without requesting any EU contribution, but still you would have committed to contribute to the joint undertaking with the letter of commitment. And then, presumably, no, not presumably, in 2026, presumably with also the associated member participation, the new flagship project will be starting. So all the information and any additional question you may have on top of what you would like to ask today can be done through info call. We have a deadline for this, which is before the end of the call for expression of interest, which is the 18th of October at 5 p.m. Same story, if you submit to us a question later on, we will not reply. We cannot reply to your question if it is submitted after the deadline, and you cannot submit any question to any members of the joint undertaking or any other joint undertaking staff, because in any case, the only valid and official reply is the one that we are publishing and transparently make available to everyone on our website. So with this, I conclude my long presentation, and let's see if there are questions in the chat. I can see one from Daniela asking if we are involved with the first call, I think, as affiliated entity. Does it mean we're not eligible to become associated member? Additional, we are participating independently in exploratory research. So this is something to be seen in the sense, as I mentioned before, if you are already an associated, the fact that you are participating as an affiliated entity in a call, but you are not an affiliated entity of a member, this is also a bit of the distinction to be made, you could eventually apply. I would personally recommend, if you are already in agreement with one of the members to participate in the call as affiliated entity of this member, honestly, there is no need for you to be involved and apply as associated members, because indirectly you're already part of the governance. Then obviously it's up to you. The fact that the participation is done in exploratory research call, so again, all our calls are open, so are possible. But we need to clarify that this distinction. If you are an affiliated entity of a member, then also your participation in an exploratory call will be counted against the in-kind contribution of the member. So we need to check this situation. Then I can see another question from Javier. Regarding the expected financial contribution, could you give a rough number of the minimum expected amount that can be realistic for a RTO application? No, I cannot give you a minimum amount, because there is no minimum amount. I mean, it's something that needs to be significant, as I mentioned, or retained as significant for the evaluators in respect of your application. Take into account that we're expecting that the associated member will be implementing the program until its end. The end of the program is 2031. Actually, the activities are expected to end around, well, a bit before 2031. Therefore, what is important is that you take also knowledge of the fact that your contribution needs to cover at least from 2026 to 2029 activities. So it's not just a one shot, it's a long-term contribution. Then applying as a several companies from Margarida requires a governance structure which should be provided in the proposal, correct? Can you elaborate the letter of commitment for this situation? So as I have explained before, there is no there is no need, first of all, for applying as a several companies, but should you want to do so, either you can apply, for example, as a member with its affiliated entities. In this case, the affiliated entities are those that demonstrate a capital or legal link with the member, and you can indicate in the application who are your affiliated entities. Secondly, you can apply, as I mentioned before, with a setting up of a joint venture, for example. In this case, the governance structure, it's the joint venture itself. Or thirdly, you don't need a governance structure, because you could apply with, for example, if I say two companies or two entities, entities A, entity B, applying together. Then if you're applied together, I guess there is a reason of some research and innovation complementarity or capabilities complementarity, but this application, it will be reflected in the letter of commitment as two companies signing the same letter of commitment. So it means that both companies are responsible for the implementation of what has been signed, and therefore there is no need for a specific governance structure for that. Are also SME encouraged to apply? Yes, so from Frindic, yes, certainly. SMEs are encouraged to apply, provided that they are able to let's say respect the conditions. I think there are a lot of SMEs that can apply. We also had in the past the joint undertaking as associated member SMEs that from SMEs now they evolved to larger company, but it's absolutely possible. Pay attention to the financial soundness of the SME, and linked also to the RTO question before, remember that one of the criteria is to reach a sufficient level of TRL, the capability to reach a big level of TRL.
There is a previous question from the UK.
Sorry, there is a previous question that apparently I haven't read. Let me.
Okay, innovation.
Louise, sorry, Louise, I missed it. No, the slides are visible for me.
Wow.
Which one? No. Oh, can you explain the mechanism by which AM associated member will share the Europe's RED JU output? Does this include from Wave 1 project or just going forward? So Wave 1 projects are already composed by projects with their own consortium. So let's say the addition of a new member in a consortium, it's entirely up to the existing consortium. And in any case, we cannot increase the grant that has been already signed. So it's usually quite difficult that this is happening, although not impossible. If contributions from new associated member would be valuable for the current ongoing project, we could foresee the possibility of, for example, associated members that come into an existing grant agreement, but it needs also the approval of the existing consortium, and they provide their knowledge and their know-how without the funding, for example. But what we are designing is indeed it will be much easier, the participation in future calls, especially because, as I have mentioned, in future calls, we're looking for additional expertise. And so the future calls of second wave and third wave will also include the requirements for this additional expertise. So in this case, associated member will have clearly the possibility to bring their expertise in the new course. In terms of sharing the output, because the call are in waves of the flagship area, we are making sure that from one way to another, there is at least a minimum set of public deliverables that allow, let's say, the knowledge transfer and continuation from one flagship project to another. Then we have another question from Carmen. If I have correctly understood, an entity becoming associated member will have a reduced funding rate when applying to a topic call. Yes, that's correct. Vasilis will explain in a moment what is the reduced funding rate. So we will reply to the question with this presentation. And then if you still further have questions, don't hesitate to come in. Next question from Gonzalo. It's about if a university become a member, part of a joint venture, for example, when it comes to project funding, is the funding received 100%? Also, this you will see in a moment, but as a member, we are expecting a leverage on the funding rate. So actually, so if you apply as a single companies, for sure you cannot receive 100% funding, because then you will not be able to produce in-kind contribution to operational activities, or you can, but then you will need to increase significantly your ICA, not ECOP. You will see also this in a moment. And if you are part of a joint venture, well, it depends maybe on the arrangement of the joint venture internally. If maybe other members of the joint venture, they significantly reduce their funding so that you could have 100% of a funding rate. So there is not a straight answer to that. Okay, I don't see any further question. If you want, then we can go to the presentation of Vasilis.
Yes, thank you very much, Giorgio. Good morning also from my side. So I will provide you with some explanations on the in-kind and financial contributions for the people, for the organizations that are interested to become associated members of our joint undertaking. So according to the establishing regulation of all the joint undertakings under Horizon Europe, the private members need to make arrangements to provide us with a total contribution of, at the beginning was 600, now it's up to 615 million. This consists of in-kind contribution to operational activities, ICOP, in-kind contributions to additional activities, ICA, and financial contributions to the administrative expenses of the joint undertaking. So first we're going to talk about the in-kind contributions. So the in-kind contribution to operational activities, it's actually the eligible cost incurred by the private members of the JU when implementing indirect actions, less than the contribution they are receiving from the joint undertaking. So in reality, the ICOP is the total eligible cost of the grant agreement minus the validated grant amount. Of course, the total eligible cost to implement the projects are described in the description of the action in the part 1 and 2 of the grant agreement. Then we have the in-kind contributions to additional activities. Again, the in-kind contribution for additional activities are also defined in the, let's say, establishing regulation of the joint undertaking. And it consists of costs incurred by the members, private members, in implementing additional activities, less any contribution to those costs from the union and from the participating meetings or states of that joint undertaking. Here, to make a clarification, EU rail does not have member states joining the joint undertaking as it is in the case for some other joint undertakings. So in case if you receive national funding, of course, it can be considered as additional activity eligible for additional activity for our joint undertaking. The in-kind contributions can be looked either to directly projects of the joint undertaking or to the entire program of the joint undertaking. And in reality, here also the in-kind contributions for additional activities is the total cost of the additional activity minus any EU funding. In our case, and in case of another joint undertaking, if there is a member state contribution minus also that member state contribution. So the in-kind contributions can consist of any types of costs as far as is necessary for the implementation of an approved additional activity. So personal costs, subcontracting, financial contributions, other direct costs. And something important, so the ICA are eligible for now for the associated members. So the moment the letter of commitment is signed by the government, is approved by the governing board decision. And of course, they are not retroactive. If I may go a bit further on what it is exactly the in-kind contribution to additional activities, according to the Single Basic Act, it can be activities covered under the indirect actions of the Europe's rail joint undertaking, but not funded under such indirect actions. Activities linked directly to the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking Work Program, research and innovation activities building on activities funded by the EU Rail Joint Undertaking or Shift2Rail Joint Undertaking, which was our predecessor, complementary research and innovation activities funded by the members other than the Union, having a clear Union added value and contributing to the achieving the objectives of the Europe Rail Joint Undertaking, activities funded by the members other than the Union in projects funded by national programs or by regional programs, which complement activities funded by the Europe's Rail Joint Undertaking. And the last one, uptake of results of activities funded under the Shift2Rail and Europe's Rail Joint Undertakings, further exploitation, demonstration activities, standardization and development of recommendations for seamless transition strategies, migration paths and updates of TSI, and European authorization and certification activities non-linked to the wider deployment. Of course, the in-kind contributions for additional activities have their own, let's say, annual cycle of planning, reporting, and approval. And for that, each member should provide to the joint undertaking its planned ICA for the year end by the end of September of the year N-1. And this should be broken down per type of additional activity, program or project related, for example, with description of the planned activities and an overview of the estimated amount of ICA over the coming years. The joint undertaking, after checking the proposed plans of the members, will submit to the governing board the annual ICA plan for approval. The ICA plan is annexed to the annual work program of the joint undertaking, and upon its approval, it is also published. Any amendments to the ICA plan of the year N is only possible until September of the year N, not later on, because on September of the year N, we would be requesting you the ICA plan for the year N+1. Then, regarding the report and the certification, of course, throughout the year N, there is no obligation in that perspective because you need to implement the ICA activities. But then by the 31st of May of the year N+1, we will need to receive your annual ICA report, which should be mirroring the ICA plan. And if there are any deviations in the costs, there should be the clarifications accompanying this report. Also, you should also provide us a certificate by an independent audit body of the costs declared as ICA using the certificates that we will provide you. And if you're not using the templates of the certificates we will provide you, then this cannot be accepted. This information will be submitted via the funding and tenders portal. This is a new facility that was implemented by the European Commission to facilitate the work of the joint undertakings. And please notice that only the cost of additional activities who are already foreseen in the ICA plan for the current year can be considered by the joint undertaking and approved and can be reported and approved by the governing board. Then when it comes to the approval, of course, after the verification of all the submitted information in the ICA report form, the governing board must approve all the total ICA reported and certified for the year N. And then this will be part of the consolidated annual activity of the joint undertaking, which will include such information for its private members. And then we move on to the financial contributions. So, according to the SBA, the resources of the joint undertaking in this budget shall be composed of the following contribution. So, the members' financial contribution to the joint undertaking for the administrative costs divided equally on an annual basis between the union and the members other than the union. The EU rail private members contribute to the administrative cost of the JU for 2021 until 2031 with a total amount of 24 million. And the distribution of the 24 million is agreed with the private members and the future associated members by means of the letters of commitment. The financial contribution of the JU administrative cost is indicatively 5% of the member total expected in-kind contribution, so ICOP and ICA. And of course, there is no entry fee of the contribution to the JU administrative cost is requested to the members on an annual basis. Regarding to how this is done on the invoicing, so every last quarter of the year, we will also provide you with pre-information email with the calculation of the request for your financial contribution. Upon confirmation of this amount by the member, we will issue electronically an invoice, and we will send it to you for you to send us to provide us with the cash. Any delay to this payment will result in a late payment interest from the date that the amount is due, and the late interest calculation is based on the ECB rate plus 3.5 points, given the current late interest, approximately 7%. Then I will talk a bit more on what Georgie was referring about the funding rate, which for us is the leverage effect and contribution targets. So here today, the EURail members are requested to comply with an amount of total in-kind contributions, ICOP and ICAP, that should be no less than 1.263 times the funding request in aggregate of the applicant private member. So, or that can be seen like a total leverage of 2.263 when it comes to the total project costs. Now, the total project costs are the Horizon Europe eligible costs, so the costs that are implemented in the grants, concerning the grants, plus the ICA. While the total eligible costs, there the funding rate is 60%, while the maximum contribution for us is 60%, while the ICOP should be 40% plus ICA. I will give you a bit of examples to understand a bit better this situation. So imagine that for 100,000 of rating, 100,000 of EU funding, the total eligible with a funding rate of 100%, the total eligible costs are 100, and the member states, since everything is funded by the EU in terms of the grant management, there is no ECOP, and they should provide 126,300 of ECA, which will satisfy the leverage of 1.263, and the total leverage of, so the total cost should be 200 to 26,300. This is the simple, let's say, scenario for you to understand that for every 100 euros in this SIM with a funding rate of 100%, you need to provide it 126,000 of ICA in order to meet the leverage effect. Now, in more realistic, let's say, terms, if we are going to what it is more or less the average funding rate that is used, so the average funding rate that is used is 60%. So for 100,000 of EU funding, you need to provide the 66,666.67 of ICOP, which brings the total eligible cost to 166,000, and additional ICA of 59,633, which will bring the total project cost to 226,300. So you see here that on top of what you need to provide us for the ECOP in order to match the funding, the 40% for the funding rate, you need on top of that to provide us a significant amount of ICA, so as to come up to the leverage effect of 1.263. The same I can explain also for the funding rate of 50%. There you can understand that your ECOP is going to be higher than the ICA you need to provide, but still the total project costs remain the same, 226,300, and the funding that you receive from us is still 100,000. So this brings the end to my presentation. If there are any questions on that matters, I'm very happy to reply to you.
Thank you, Vasilis. Let's wait a bit if there are any questions to that. In the meantime, another point that I think it's important to mention in this info day is also that your application should be done by economic entities that have the capability also. So the capability, it's a clear demonstration element of the criteria that I have mentioned to you before to perform the activity. So it cannot be an entity that don't have the capability but think to provide the capability through its membership or through plenty of subcontractors. So this will be a risky application, because I think the evaluator will have difficulty to assess the real capacity of the applicant to perform the research and innovation activity. So this is also something I think it's important for you to consider.
There is a question from Pereira. If a university becomes a member as part of a joint venture,
I already replied.
I'm sorry.
Okay. New question. Go ahead.
When it is expected the first invoice for the administrative cost for the new associated members, September 2025, it will last until 2031. Well, of course, the first invoice will be expected in September 25, obviously, but then this will happen on an annual basis. So this will concern only the expenses of the year 25. It will not be even one invoice for the whole duration. The second question from Luis: do members, associate members, and non-members receive the same amount of grant and then the ICA, ECOP is additional. Then I think here we have to make a distinction on the basis of the Horizon Europe rules. It depends on depending on what type of organization you are. This also will depend your funding rate on the granting. But as I mentioned on the level concerning the leverage, you might need, in order to come up with a commitment that you need to provide us, you might need to come up with additional ICA to match it up in case because of the nature of your organization, your funding rate is higher, let's say, than the average used from our current members.
But also, maybe just to clarify, I don't know if this was also the type of the direction of the question. There is no difference between a funding member and associated member in terms of how they are treated for funding or ECOP and ICA. So it's exactly the same. De facto, we're looking for new member. The fact that associated member are called associated member, it's because they were not part of the funding regulation, and the funding member had more, let's say, stringent rules for the application because they had a minimum amount required of in-kind contribution, where I mentioned before, here there is no minimum amount.
There is another question from Xing Yu. Thanks for the presentation. Applicants' ability to commit long-term financial, indicative 5% of the total expected associated member contribution and in-kind contribution ECOP and ICA to EU rail, leverage value of the proposed contribution that relevant additional investment. Does this mean 600 million? No, 600 million is the total is for everybody, and actually 615. It's not 600 million individually. It's actually from the contribution you are going to bring to the joint undertaking. You should foresee a 5% approximately of that contribution to be financial contribution for the expenses of the joint undertaking. Of course, the expenses of the joint undertaking are to 24 million. And by bringing also additional members, it means that at the end, the distribution will be different also within the members and the associated members. So everything will be all brought together. It will not be. It will all be relativized, which means. But coming back to this question again. You should consider from the contribution you're planning to bring to the joint undertaking a maximum 5% of financial contribution to the administrative expenses.
Maybe to complement, it's a little bit less, most probably, than 5%, but we have said indicatively 5%, so that you can expect maximum this amount. And it will be calculated based on the single, on the overall contribution from all the members and proportionally to the contribution.
If I remember correctly from the slide, are the eligibility criteria for ICA now also applicable to projects funded under European Rails EU in Sea2Rail, weren't EU-funded projects excluded? Thanks. For the ICA, the criteria is that you shouldn't, if you receive from another European program funding, this cannot be considered as an in-kind contribution for additional activities. If you receive from a national level, national funding or regional funding, then of course it can be considered as ICA contribution. If you use own resources, obviously it can be considered the ICA contribution for additional activities. But yes, you cannot use from other EU projects funded by other programs and consider this as an in-kind contribution for additional activities.
What we need to do is that we need to subtract the EU funding part. So also, I think it's important if you are benefiting from regional funds, that you check that those regional funds are not actually coming from EU funds, which is often the case. So in this case, the EU funds needs to be reduced. What we suggest to the member, and it's our strong recommendation, is that ICA, it's actually additional activities linked to the action, so meaning links to the future project that members will apply under Europe's rate, so that it's really additional activities that are part of the project itself, so that there is no issue in the recognition of ICA. It's really you bring on top additional workforces and the expertise in the project.
There's another one, working backwards. If the project cost is 226, the grant value is always no. No. The grant value depends on the funding rate that you are, let's say, according to the status of your organization, in accordance with the Horizon Europe rules, you can have. That the 100,000, it was just it was a clarification just to understand the difference in the numbers. What it is important is that you need to understand that for each 100,000, you need to provide 126,300 of contribution, either in ECOP or in ICA.
Yeah, maybe also to complement, so by the regulation, we need to apply reduced funding rate for our flagship project. Okay, so it means that our flagship project will always have a reduced funding rate. For the moment, in the past call, the reduced funding rate that we have put is 60%. It can be that in the future it can be lower than that if we see that we have a deficit of ICOP, for example. But at the moment it was set at 60%. And 60%, it means that it's an overall consortium obligation. So even though you may be a company entitled with a normal funding rate to get up to 100%, for example, if the other member of the consortium don't agree then to reduce lower than 60%, so that in total the project is 60%, you will have difficulties. So what we see a lot in the flagship project is that in general, all consortium members apply a funding rate of 60% independently of their possibilities. And sometimes there are, for example, universities that are part of the consortium where they decide, well, the consortium decide, okay, university will have more, 100%, and then it means that other entities either linked to this university will have a lower funding rate than 60%, so that the total of the flagship project remain 60%. So it's a bit of a construct, but keep it in mind that for flagship project in general is 60% the funding. Okay. I don't see any more questions. So I would like to thanks everybody for staying with us those couple of hours, and I encourage you as well to. There is one more question. Two more questions. So let's wait a bit. So regarding the flagship project, I'm sorry, someone already asked. Okay, but only members from URA can participate or will be an open call. No, it is an open call. So you don't need to be a member to participate in the flagship project. Be although aware that flagship project, because they are the majority of our program in terms of sites, it is very likely that the members will participate or will build up a consortium for replying to flagship project. So it's also up to you to see if you would like to build a competitive project proposal or be part of a consortium where, for example, there are some members of Europe's Rail participating, but this is entirely to you. The call is completely open, and in fact, the current flagship project that do contain a mix of members and non-members into the consortium. Then, is it mandatory to meet the topic listed in, EA, the application will be automatically rejected regardless of the content not meeting the point, or will this content considered in the application may be accepted if found and fitted in the MAWP objective, although not explicitly listed in the table? So yeah, so what you are saying is correct, is not mandatory to meet those topics, although obviously it's something that we do recommend because those are the area that we have already identified as missing in our multi-annual program. As I have mentioned, if you have additional elements that you would like to bring to the table, you can. If you would like to bring totally new elements, you can also. But then, okay, it will be part of also an assessment from the evaluator if this is really complementary activities. While if you apply to what where those additional elements, those have been already identified as complementary activities. This is the only advantage, let's say, that you have, that you know that if you apply for those, are already considered as complementary activities. Another question. Application submitted by the applicant in the form of a consortium, in a sense a group of beneficiaries, will not be considered eligible. Does this mean that only one entity should go for one application? If we have 2 or 3 companies are involved, should they submit 2 or 3 applications? So you will see when we will, well, maybe I can bring back this slide. But in the previous in one of the previous slide, you can see that you can decide to apply also with a grouping in a different form. You can see there for 3 different examples. If you apply together 2 or 3 companies, like you are mentioning, either you have one company and the other 2 are affiliated entities, so meaning that this one company is the one that is liable towards us, or you can decide to form a joint venture, or you can decide to apply as a free individual company, but together, so meaning that each of them signed the same letter of commitment. And as I mentioned, there is absolutely no need for you to apply all the 3 companies together. You can decide indeed to have 3 different applications because there is no minimum contribution required. But this is completely up to you. If you believe that it makes sense that you apply together and your application together, I don't know, may have more chances to meet the different criteria, then you apply together. But otherwise, if each individual companies can meet the criteria individually, each individual company can decide to submit individually. And then if all the 3 are selected, it will mean that all the 3 will sign an individual letter of commitment, and each of them.
This is replied in the QA published.
It's also replied in the QA, yes. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, no more questions. So thank you again to everyone. I wish you a good reflection about your application. And if you decided to submit an application, have a good building up as well of your application. And I wish you all the best also for the next steps. Please don't be discouraged if you're not selected, because you can see that there is a strong selection procedure to become members. So it may be possible that out of the selection procedure, you don't reach the necessary threshold. This doesn't mean that your company is not good or your entity is not good. It simply means that it doesn't meet the overall criteria in the overall evaluation of associated member. And even if you're not selected as a member, you can always apply to our cause. And again, the application to our cause is not conditioned to the fact of becoming member, including in the flagship project, as I have indicated before. So thank you very much for your interest. Thank you to the colleagues as well for the presentation and all the background work. And yeah, I wish you a very nice day.